The schedule of the proposed questions. Members, we now move to the Building Amendment Bill number 3. The question is at Part 1, Stand Part. And the Part 1 debates on clauses 4 through to 77 and the schedule.
Yes. Mr Speaker.
I call the Honourable Minister Maurice Williamson.
Mr Chairman, I want to just take a brief call to outline what this bill is about and to address, I think, some concerns that were raised at the second reading after the bill was reported back from the Select Committee. Sir, I think the most valid of the concerns raised by Labor at the time was that this is only a piece of what is required and that a more comprehensive and fuller bill should have been brought to the House. Sir, can I say in starting, I actually agree with that. I think a more extensive bill covering a lot more issues would have been preferable. However, sir, the decision finally was taken to at least get those things done that we could do now, get those things which will take a little bit while longer put onto a slower track, which we're going to call the number 4 bill, which is waiting for its first reading, already been introduced to this House. And yet, sir, even some more work, which I think is quite problematic, going to be brought to another piece of legislation. So yes, indeed, this is only, and I emphasise, only part of the total picture. The hardest part, which I am very strongly of a belief needs to be dealt to, and that is the liability regime that underpins the building and construction sector. I actually don't think there is sense to maintain the joint and several liability, and would love to see us move to proportionate liability. That is way more problematic than I first thought, and the government has now passed that piece of work on to the Law Commission and asked them to see if they can report back to us how we could implement it. But this bill, sir, this number 3 bill, is central to, it's a building block for the entire Building Act reform. And what it comes about, this bit, sir, I think in a nutshell, is to do with risk-based consenting and a whole risk-based approach to the way we build buildings, rather than a one-size-fits-all. Mr Chairman, up until this bill, we have treated every one of the buildings built in this country in the same way. They have to have the same level of inspections. They have to have the same level of scrutiny put on them. So if you are building a very simple, single-storey, timber frame, 2-bedroom, almost cottage-type building, you are going to be up for the same levels of inspections and consenting process as you would be if you were building a multi-storey, so as the builder would be building a multi-storey, extensive building with unusual materials. So this is about trying to say, let's reduce the necessary level of red tape for the buildings that are at the lower end of the risk curve, but maintain that level of scrutiny for buildings that are at the high end or in the very high end. But, Mr Chairman, you can't make that change unless you can do something to acknowledge the skills of the practitioner doing the work. And up until now, and I know I've said it as a joke a number of times, but I stand by it, all you need to do to be a builder in New Zealand, up until this week, all an individual needed to do to be a builder was to have a cell phone, a dog and a ute. And you could easily go out and build a house, and people did it all the time. Well, sir, that changed on the 1st of March, 5 days ago. I know it's the 1st of March because today is my birthday, sir, and it was 5 days ago that it changed. And on the 1st of March, you now need to be a licensed building practitioner to do... A person needs to be a licensed building practitioner to do the work, what we call restricted building work, which is brought into effect by this legislation, sir. And what we say under restricted building work is it's that building work that is critical to the structural integrity or the weather tightness capacity of the building. So a builder will still be able to go and move the kitchen cupboards around in a building without being a licensed practitioner, and still be able to do some renovations in the wardrobes or the bathroom or whatever. But when it comes to the restricted building work on a new building, that is, the structural integrity and the weather tightness aspects of a building, the practitioner will need to be a licensed practitioner. Just, Mr Chairman, as we ask people flying our 737s that bring us to Wellington all the time to be licensed pilots. And just as we ask for our brain surgeons who are operating on a brain tumour on our head to be a qualified surgeon, Mr Chairman, we are also asking for the... Mr Chairman?
The Minister.
Mr Chairman, I won't take too much longer. I just want to go through what this is about. So we've got a risk-based consenting regime, and we've got a regime which brings into effect licensed building practitioner. Now, the first concern that was raised with me as Minister is if you make it that only licensed building practitioners can build, then you will take away the do-it-yourselfer who wants to build their own property. Well, no, there's an exemption for a do-it-yourselfer in this legislation. So somebody who says, I don't want to have to be a licensed practitioner or be supervised by one, can do so under very unique conditions. They're only allowed to be doing one every 3 years, and that is because examples from other jurisdictions like South Australia showed that a do-it-yourself exemption meant you just built and sold. Built and sold, built and sold. And of course you weren't then a do-it-yourselfer, you were just in the marketplace for doing it. So we've put in place that exemption. It will also be recorded against the property so that any future buyer will know. And under the buyer beware regime of this country, a buyer will say, well, I don't mind. I know the guy who built it, he's a fantastic carpenter or whatever, I can live by it. Or, boy, I'm a bit worried about this. For that reason alone, I think it's got to have a discount to its price. So, Mr Chairman, I look forward to detailing any of the specifics of this Part 1 of the bill, but I repeat again, it is only a part of the bigger Building Act review, a building block, and so those members who have a criticism of it being only that, I fully accept that, but there's more to come. As members will know, there's a number 4 bill already on the order paper to be read a first time, and there will be another bill later this year. It'll become the number 1 bill because we go to the new numbering. And secondly, sir, what I want to say to members of this House, if they have any concerns about the sector, go out and ask the sector whether they're in favour of this. Because I have talked to just about everybody, master builders, certified builders, Building Industry Federation, Construction Industry Group, from placemakers to Mitre 10 to Bunnings to you name it. I cannot find people who are opposed to this. They think this is stuff that was started under Labor and the good auspice of what Shane Jones was trying to do to the Building Act, and I give him some credit for that. And this was just taking that work and taking it on to fulfilment. And Mr Speaker, so I look forward to the debate.
I call the Honourable Member Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Chairman.